Hi everyone, we're Equifax company. Equifax is a consumer credit reporting agency. It collects information on over 888 million individual and business customers. The projection of the revenue is based on the product of customer numbers and average revenue per customer. The model assumes the growth of customers remains constant and our tax rate is 32%. Also, the Equifax has four segments. The first one is US Information Solution, second one is International, third one is Workforce Solution, and the last one is the Global Customer Solutions.
In my part, I will give you guys a brief introduction about different risk scenarios in external relationship risk and the changes in the economic conditions, as well as the quantified impact on the company value, the revenue growth rate, and the net income growth rate. First, let's look at the external relationship risk. And we assume that there's 40% that the Equifax will not affected by the external relationship risk. And for the pessimistic scenario, we assume that the probability is 35%. And under this situation, the media will report the scandals of the data breach, and the credit rating agency will slightly lower the credit ratings of the company. So the average growth rate of customer as well as the average cost of service per customer will decrease, and the interest rate on that will increase. And the quantified impact of this scenario is that the company value will decrease by 35%, and the 5-year revenue growth will decrease by 61%, and the 5-year net income growth will decrease by 84%. And in the extremely pessimistic scenario, the media will continuously report the bad influence of the data breach, and the customer will choose the Equifax competitor, and the relationship with the credit agency will go bad, so the credit rating will sharply decrease. And under this situation, the average growth rate of customer as well as the average cost of service per customer will increase sharply, and the interest rate on that will also increase. And the quantified impact will be, the company value will decrease by 57%, and the 5-year revenue growth will decrease by 110%, and the 5-year net income revenue will decrease by 170%. And in the optimistic scenario, we assume the probability is 5%. In this situation, the Equifax act positively to the data breach and take immediately actions to compensate customers and maintain a very good relationship with the credit rating agency, so their credit rating will not be downgraded, and the quantified impact will be the company value will decrease by 16%, and the 5-year average revenue growth rate will decrease by 24%, and the 5-year net income growth rate will decrease by 31%. And in the economic conditions, we know that Equifax is a financial technology company, so the operating income and the company revenue will affected by different economic conditions. So in the first scenario, we assume that there is 35% that economic conditions will remain stable and the company value will not be affected. And in the pessimistic scenario, the economy is negatively affected by the unemployment rate and the inflation rate increasing. So in this situation, the customer number will decrease and the interest rate on that will increase. And the quantified impact on the company value is the company value will decrease by 10%, and the 5-year revenue growth will decrease by 20%, and the 5-year net income growth will decrease by 25%. And then for the extremely pessimistic scenario, we assume the probability is the 15%. And in this scenario, the economy is in a great recession, and the disposable income for per person is decreased sharply. So the demand for credit report will decrease. So the customer number will sharply decrease. So in this scenario, the quantified impact is the company value will decrease by 25%, and the 5-year revenue growth will decrease by 52%, and the 5-year net income growth will decrease by 71%. And for the optimistic economic scenario, we assume that the probability is 20%, and in this situation, and the financial institutions will lower their interest rate on debt to release the excess deposits, and the people will have more money to invest, so they will increase their demand for credit report. So under this scenario, the customer number will increase and the interest rate on that will decrease. And the quantified impact is the company value will increase by 11%, and the 5-year revenue growth will increase by 23%, and the 5-year net income growth will increase by 28%.
Hi, now I'm going to talk about the litigation risk of Equifax. In September 2017, Equifax announced its massive data breach incident, which cost its customers both financial data and personal data were compromised. After this delayed announcement, both shareholders and customers were very angry and disappointed by Equifax company's ability to protect the safety of its customers' information. There were around 143 million customers who were affected by this incident, and the company's stock price dropped sharply. Um, credit rating agencies decided to downgrade the company. Now the company faces around 112 lawsuits from all over the world. The company now faces huge litigation risk. So now after we're doing the quantification, we put the baseline likelihood um, as 35%. So baseline litigation, we assume the litigation conditions are stable and company value will not be damaged. Under the pessimistic scenario, we put the likelihood as 30%. In this scenario, we assume the company after contacting affected customers and wanted to settle the lawsuits privately with these customers, but only some of them are willing to um, settle the lawsuits with company privately. Others still decide to sue the company. So the estimation of the cost of the lawsuits will be around $1 billion for the company. So the change, I think this litigation risk will affect the average percentage of customer growth and the company's one-time SG&A expenses. Under the pessimistic scenario, I put my average percentage of customer growth as negative 3% for the first year and 2%, negative 2% as the second year, and negative 1% as the third year. One-time SG&A will increase accordingly also. So I put as 8% in year one and 5% in year two and 3% in year three. Now we're getting the scenario wrong, the numbers. Now we're going to the extremely pessimistic scenario. So we guess the likelihood of this scenario happening is around 15%. It says after contacting these affected customers, none of none of the affected customers are willing to um, settle the lawsuits privately with the company, they still decide to go to the lawsuits and um, getting more compensation, getting more reimbursement from the company. Under this scenario, I put the average percentage growth of customers as for Model 1 as negative 10%, and model year 2 will be negative 7%, and model year 3 would be negative 5%. One-time SG&A will increase sharply to help the company deal with the customer service situations and contacting affected customers and um, try to find a solution to deal with this incident with customers. So one-time SG&A under very pessimistic scenario, I put as 12%, 9%, and 6%. Then I did the scenario wrong and to get the company value 5-year revenue, etc. So under the optimistic scenario, we predict this likelihood of happening is 20%. It says, which is after contacting affected customers, most of affected customers would like to settle these lawsuits with us, with the company Equifax, privately, and only very few of them decided to go to the court to get more reimbursement from this incident from Equifax. And then with this scenario wrong, to get the optimistic value, dollar value of change, 5-year revenue, etc. Okay, thank you.
For next risk is strategic competitor risk. So if Equifax has many competitors such as Experian, TransUnion, they are the biggest company providing similar service to customer as Equifax. After Equifax cybersecurity incident, the company has changed the strategy to avoid a huge customer to leave using the service. In this case, average percentage growth of consumer and capital costs are most significant driver. So for the quantification, the pessimistic scenario likelihood is 30%. In this scenario, our average percentage growth of customer will decrease to 5% in the next year. Capital costs will increase 20% in the next 3 years. So for this scenario run, the percentage change for the company value is negative 19.47%, and the 5-year revenue growth rate is negative 40%, and the 5-year income growth rate is negative 53%. For the extremely pessimistic scenario, the likelihood is 20%. As competitor strategy is very successful and their service and product are better than us, people shift to the competitor company and stop using Equifax. Therefore, Equifax will lose customer and a growth rate of customer and the capital cost. It will decrease 10% for each next 3 years, and the 30% of capital cost increase for next 3 years. For this scenario run, the percentage of company value change is almost negative 40%, and very dramatically, the 5-year revenue CAGR is negative 82.40%, and the income for next year growth rate is negative 118%. For the optimistic scenario, the likelihood is 10%. So in this scenario, competitor strategy is not working, or there's something happened to the competitor company, and Equifax don't lose their customers on the container we may be increased in average percentage growth of customer capital costs just change a little more. So for the capital cost, it will change 5% and the average growth rate of customer will increase 5%. For this scenario run, everything is positive. A percentage of company value will increase to 20%. 5-year CAGR revenue will increase almost 40%, and the 5-year net income CAGR will increase 46.86%. Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm going to talk about the data breach risk. So database is very important to Equifax because all about the company is information. So in 2017 September, Equifax announced a cyber data breach in this year, and it cost more than 143 million customer and 22 billion USD loss. So for the quantification, the pessimistic scenario likelihood is 30%. In this scenario, the risk scenario, the company discovered the risk as soon as it happened and add a little R&D expense to solve the problem. Part of the limited customer information has breached, but all is in control. So it might cause decreased growth of customer and the average revenue per customer. The one thing I want to remark here is the additional R&D expense. So since there's a technology risk happen, so the first year R&D cost will increase to 10%, and the second year will decrease to 9%, and the 8% for third year. So for the scenario run, the percentage change for the company value is negative 16.6%, and in 5-year revenue growth rate is negative 32%. The 5-year net income growth rate is negative 42%. For the extremely pessimistic scenario, the company did not take action immediately, and thus there's more people and the customer or a shareholder lost the confidence and trust to Equifax. It does more loss for Equifax. So since Equifax didn't take action at the first move, maybe they need to improve the whole system. So there's more additional R&D expense, and it increased to 35% because it has to renew and rebuild everything. Average revenue per customer will decrease 5% since there's more R&D expense, and growth rate of customer will decrease because people lost confidence to Equifax. And the scenario run will for the scenario run, the percentage change will decrease to 53%, and the 5-year growth rate will decrease dramatically 126%, and the 5-year net income will decrease dramatically more than 200%. That's very damage to Equifax. But for the optimistic scenario, in this scenario case, Equifax technology data breach is fixed and became more secure and stable than other competitor companies, and demand will increase. For this one, the change will be really stable like normal. The average growth rate will be expected to decrease 3%, and the additional R&D expense will a little increase to 6%, but after all, it will be really stable. For this scenario run, the percentage change is not really different, and the 5-year growth rate and the 5-year net income are about 13 to 50%, and that's the optimistic scenario.